MMAOB Daily Show. I'm your host, as always, Adam Martin. I'll be taking you guys through the latest in the world of mixed martial arts. Guys, first and foremost, follow me on Twitter at MMAOB. It's right there on the screen. Check us out at MMAOddsbreaker.com. This podcast is available on our YouTube channel. Please like, share, subscribe, tell your friends about it. Also, check me out at bjpenn.com and MMARings.net. So today's actually going to be a pretty good show. I should mention I'm doing 2 podcasts today. I'll be breaking down Contender Series and some fight announcements on this show. And then at about 11 o'clock, Cole Shelton will join me and we'll be previewing the UFC Uruguay card. So that should be pretty good. We'll start with the Contender Series tonight. So that's Dana White's Contender Series 23. 5 fights tonight as usual. So pretty good scraps. I'll get my thoughts on them. So we'll start with the top, work our way down. First up, we got Harvey Park taking on Omar Morales. It's a lightweight fight. Park's 33 years old. He's from he's an LFA champion, so he's actually won 3 straight fights. Lost to Austin Hubbard in 2018. Most of his wins have come by stoppage, so he's been pretty solid. He's beaten some pretty good opposition as well. Morales is also 33. He's unbeaten. He last competed for Bellator in 2018. He doesn't fight that often, though. He only fights about once a year, which definitely worries me. And his level of opposition has not been the greatest. So I definitely agree with the odds here, opening Park up as the favorite. He deserves to be a favorite, I think. I believe he will get the win in this fight. The odds are a little bit wider than I expected, but considering Morales is undefeated, but I do think Harvey's going to get his hand raised by decision or stoppage, hard to say. So there's no props right now from what I can see, but I do like Harvey Park to win this fight. Next up, we have a women's flyweight bout as Marilia Santos takes on Lucirezia Ria. Santos, 26 years old. She's on a 2-fight win streak. Last lost to Weili Zhang in China in 2017. So that's not a bad loss. Zhang's fighting for the title against Andrade later this month. It's not a bad loss at all. Ria's 27 years old. She's actually won 5 straight fights. She has fought one current UFC fighter, but back in the day in 2015, she lost to Mara Romero Barella, which it's not a great loss to have. I think Barella's not that great herself. She's got knocked out by Lauren Murphy. Most of her other opposition's unknown. So, you know what? It's a women's flyweight fight. I think it's going to be close. I think it will go to decision. Maybe if that prop comes out, that's the way to go here. But I do lean towards Santos slightly. I just don't think it's worth betting on personally. Maybe that prop of the fight going the distance, as I do see it going the full 3 rounds. Next up, we have a featherweight bout as Herbert Burns takes on Derek Minner. This should be a pretty good fight. Herbert Burns, that's the brother of Gilbert Burns, 31 years old. He's actually coming off 2 straight wins at Titan FC. Prior to that, he was fighting in one championship. He had a 5-2 record in one, which is pretty solid, of course. He's fought some pretty good competition there as well. Derek Minner has been around a long time, 22-9 record. He's been fighting all over the American regional scene for like the last 10 years, basically. His most recent win was actually a knockout over Clay Collars. Well, we'll talk about later in the show, surprisingly enough. But most of his wins are by submission, and that's good, but not against Herbert Burns, who I believe is the better submission artist. He's not as good as Gilbert is, but I think he is pretty good on the ground. So I got to like Herbert Burns in this fight. The odds are pretty wide. I should mention them. He's like minus 400, so it's pretty wide odds for sure. But I do think that actually he's minus 590, excuse me. He opened at minus 400, so he's minus 590 now. I do think Herbert Burns wins this fight. Those are wide odds, so not sure if there's value there at minus 590, but I do think Herbert Burns wins this fight. Just it's a little bit too much, I think, for Derek Minner, who I kind of feel bad for because, man, worked a long time to get to almost the UFC, and now he's fighting Herbert Burns. So tough fight for him, I think. I think Burns probably gets the finish in this one. Next up, middleweight bout between Andre Muniz and Taylor Johnson. So Muniz, he's the underdog here. Muniz is 29 years old. He's won 3 straight fights. He actually won a fight in the Contender Series last year in the Brazilian version of it. He has fought all over the Brazilian regional scene, including a big win over Paulo Filho back in 2014, which at the time was a pretty big win. That guy actually was somewhat of a big fighter back in the day. So definitely a decent win, but it's been a while since then. Johnson is 28 years old, undefeated since his pro debut in 2016. Most of his wins in LFA. Johnson got a lot of hype behind him. A lot of people are talking about this guy. I saw Mark Coleman talking about him yesterday on Twitter, saying this guy's got a lot of potential. So I'm not surprised he's the favorite here. Obviously, he's undefeated. He's a young prospect, but I think Muniz has a better chance to win. The odds are indicating he does have more experience, a lot more experience. He has 16 more fights. So to me, that's something that could help him out here. I think it's a dog or pass situation. We've seen in the Contender Series a lot of underdogs actually win this season. So this would be, of the fights on this card, I think this would be the dog I'd be taking my eye on. But, you know, I could see why Johnson is favored. He is that young prospect that should win this fight, but I just think the odds are a little wide. Finally, we have Dwight Joseph take on Jay Perrin in a bantamweight bout. They actually opened at -110 apiece, but currently we have Perrin as a decent favorite, -165. Perrin, 26 years old, 5-fight win streak right now. He's fought mainly for Cage Titans on the East Coast as well as Bellator. Joseph, 28 years old, 6-fight win streak. Most of his wins by stoppage. Like I said, the odds open as a pick 'em. Both guys on long win streaks. However, I do believe Perrin has fought better competition, and I think he will get the job done this fight. So I can kind of see why the early action is coming on him. So we'll see what happens tonight. Should be a good card. There's only, I think, 3 cards left after this one. I'm just going to double check that. There's today, 1, 2, 3. Yes, 3 more episodes after today. So you know what? It's been a really good season. I think I'm looking forward to the last couple episodes. But overall, yeah, it's been definitely a good season. And we'll see what happens as far as it goes next year or even in the fall. There's been some rumors they could continue doing the show later on in the year. But then you heard Dana White talk about the Ultimate Fighter this week. So I'm not 100% sure what's next for the Contender Series, but I hope it does stick around. I hope it comes a little bit more often. And I personally would get rid of the Ultimate Fighter, but it looks like ESPN wants it. Let's talk about some news here. So Jon Jones is back in the news. This time he's criticizing the UFC rankings. He made a kind of a funny Instagram post just ripping the rankings. Basically, if you look at the pound-for-pound rankings, Daniel Cormier is ranked ahead of Jon Jones, and he doesn't like that, obviously. He's beat him twice, so I can see why. Now, I can see why DC is also ranked above Jon Jones. He's fought at 2 weight classes, and this is the criticism I have of Jon Jones. Don't get me wrong. This guy is the greatest ever. He's amazing, no doubt about it, but he's only fought 1 weight class. The best fighters ever have fought in multiple weight classes, for the most part. GSP, Randy Couture, DC. So most of these guys have fought in multiple weight classes. Jones has only fought at light heavyweight. It'd be nice to see him move to heavyweight at some point. I do think he probably should be ranked ahead of DC just based on the fact he has 2 wins over him, but I can see kind of where the voters are coming from. Either way, I thought it was worth mentioning because it's kind of funny Jones ripped them. Also, Tyron Woodley's back in the news. He says he's training with GSP, so that's pretty big. Not sure who's next for Tyron Woodley. He actually thinks RDA would be a good fight for him. So Dos Anjos versus Woodley, I think that'd be a fun fight as well. Makes sense. Both guys former champions in the UFC. Both guys need to get back on the win streak. So makes sense to me. There's not many other options. Like he said he wanted to fight the winner of Colby and Usman. That's not going to happen. He needs to get a win. I guess they could reschedule the Wilder fight. Wilder's on a bit of a losing streak now, but you could reschedule that. You could have given someone like Ponzinibbio or Stephen Thompson maybe in a trilogy fight. I don't know if anyone's interested in that. Maybe Pettis, Diaz, the winner of that fight, or even the loser. I'm not too sure, but there are some options for Woodley, but it's good to see him training with GSP because iron sharpens iron, as we know, and that's those are some pretty good training partners there. Ben Askren's kind of in the news. Him and Demian Maia have been talking on Twitter. He says the fight's verbally agreed to for UFC Singapore. UFC has not announced this fight yet, but Ben Askren said it's going to happen this week, so we'll see. I'll talk about the fight more if it is announced, but I do like the matchup quite a bit. Yeah, it could be boring, but man, those are 2 of the best grapplers in the UFC, so that should be a pretty good fight, I think, for hardcore fans if it does happen. Let's talk about some fight announcements here. A couple fights for UFC Mexico City. That card just keeps getting more fights announced. Steven Peterson is back. He's taking on Martin Bravo. I'm going to pull his record out here. Steven Peterson, the call of Ocho, of course. Coming off a really controversial loss, I think, to Alex Caceres. I thought he won that fight. I did pick him as the underdog just to be completely fair and transparent here, but I think most people thought Peterson won 2 rounds in that fight. So that was kind of a weird decision in my opinion. He's 1-3 now in the UFC, so he desperately needs to get a win here. Almost in a way surprising to get another fight, but he usually is in good scraps. Bravo, he is 1-2 in the UFC. He's actually coming off a loss to Caceres as well, a split decision. So both guys coming off losses to Caceres. We know Caceres is basically at the bottom of that division right now. So the loser of this fight is getting cut for sure. Kind of lean towards Peterson. I just think more experience, but man, this guy has not been a great bet so far in the UFC. Also on that card, Marco Polo Reyes is taking on Kyle Nelson. So good for these guys to get another fight in the UFC. Let's see here. Polo Reyes, pull him out as well. 8-6 record. He is just, what's his record? He's 4-3 in the UFC. So that's a decent record, and his wins, 3 of them might come by knockout. But here's the problem: he's been knocked out 3 times himself, including a devastating knockout loss to Drew Dober back in June. So again, another guy that desperately needs a win. I've talked about this many times on the podcast. With all the guys coming in from the Contender Series, the UFC is going to have to start cutting fighters. Guys like Polo Reyes, unfortunately, are the kind of guys that are going to be cut. He is an exciting guy, but you got to get the job done. Kyle Nelson's in the same boat, 12-3 record, and he's 0-2 in the UFC. Now, I feel bad for him because he's had 2 tough matchups against Diego Ferreira and Matt Sales, but at the same time, you got to get the job done. He just has not got the job done. The fight with Diego Ferreira I thought was a pretty good fight. I like Kyle Nelson. I've watched him fight for a long time in Ontario. I've seen him fight in person a couple of times back in the day. So definitely an interesting fighter, but I don't know. This is this fight can go either way. Polo Reyes is tough to trust with that chin, but at the same time, Nelson's not really a knockout artist. So definitely a fight can go either way. Next up, UFC 241. There's an injury replacement here. Clay Collard, who I mentioned earlier in the show. It's crazy that he's coming back now. He's fighting in the UFC against Devonte Smith, and this, to me, is a really tough matchup. Clay Collard's replacing John McDusty, by the way, on like 2 weeks' notice. Yeah, the fight's in 11 days. So, tough fight for Clay Collard, I think. I really like this guy. He's only 26, so he's pretty young. He had a crazy fight with Max Holloway in his debut back in 2014. Lost via third-round knockout. Then he beat Alex White, then lost to Gabriel Benitez and Thiago Traitor. The UFC cut him. Since then, he's picked up 2 finishes on the Utah regional scene, both fights in Salt Lake City. That's where most of his fights have come in his career. He's fought Justin Buchholz a couple times as well. The guy's a fun fighter to watch. He has a lot of finishing ability, 12 wins by finish out of 16 wins in his career. So, guy's a finisher, but man, I mean, this is a brutal matchup for him against Devonte Smith. We know Devonte Smith, how good he is. The guy's just a complete knockout artist, so much power. What's his record now? 10-1 in his career, 26 years old. He's on a 6-fight win streak. He's won 2 straight fights in the UFC by KO over Julian Erosa and Demian Maia, both in the first round. He's actually coming off of 4 straight first-round knockouts. So this guy is a complete monster. He's going to be a huge favorite here. I expect Devonte Smith to be like minus 500 in this fight. I think he wins easily. Easy fight for him. Next up, we have Deiveson Figueiredo against Tim Elliott. That's the last match I'll talk about today. Now, Deiveson Figueiredo just fought like a few weeks ago, obviously, against Alexander Patoja, actually 2 weeks ago at UFC 240. He picked up a great win, amazing fight of the night. Now he's jumping back in the cage right away. So good for him. He's overall 5-1 in the UFC. We know how good he is. Guy is just a talent, man. He's such a good striker and so much fun to watch. Taking on Tim Elliott here, 32 years old. Tim Elliott is 15-8-1 in his career. He has not fought since 2017 when he submitted Mark De La Rosa and won a performance in the night bonus. The guy's bounced around between bantamweight and flyweight during his career, 2 runs in the UFC. Overall, solid fighter, but I think he does have some flaws in his game. I like Figueiredo in this fight. As long as he keeps it standing, he's going to win this fight. But at the same time, we saw what happened when he fought Formiga. He got taken down quite a bit and got decisions. So it's possible this guy could just smother him, but it's Elliott I'm talking about. But we'll see. I mean, if the fight stays on the feet, there's no way I think Elliott beats him. So I do lean towards Figueiredo. After that last performance, I think it's really tough not to lean towards the guy. He's pretty damn good. So overall, some good fight announcements. Like I said, I'll be breaking down UFC Uruguay in just a little bit with Cole Shelton. So stay tuned to the channel, guys. I'll be jumping back on very shortly. Until then, follow me on Twitter at MMAOB. It's right there on the screen. This podcast is available at MMAOddsbreaker.com and on our YouTube channel. Like, share, and subscribe. Please spread the word about the podcast, guys. There's some other good shows on this channel as well. Mike's MMA Picks is a really good show as well. He does breakdowns every Saturday morning. And of course, Brian and Nick do their full breakdowns and bets for their cards. So check those things out as well. Also at bjpen.com, I've been writing a lot of articles over there as well. So check me out there, guys. And also MMARatings.net. So all those places. But until then, guys, I'll be back in just a little bit with Cole Shelton to break down UFC Uruguay. So stay tuned to the channel. We'll be back very shortly. Thanks for tuning in. I'll talk to you guys later on today, and then I'll see you guys tomorrow.